So what actually happens once you've agreed your sale? I'm going to explain some of the key aspects that you need to know to get you through to that crucial completion date. Okay, so you've agreed your sale. Congratulations, but that's only half the battle. Now we need to go through what most people know as the conveyancing process. This is all the legal work that needs to happen before we can exchange and complete on your sale, which I will explain. So I'm going to give you a very basic overview of the steps involved to get to exchange and completion. But first, let me explain what that actually means. The exchange of contracts is quite literally just that. It's when all the legal work has been done and all parties in the chain are ready, and they can quite literally exchange contracts, the signed contracts, and pay deposits. It's at this point, the exchange of contracts, that everything is locked in and it's a done deal. At this point, you've also set and agreed a completion date, which becomes locked in. The completion date is moving day. So on that day, all funds are finally transferred and that completes the sale and everybody moves. So what do we actually need to do in order to get to this exchange and completion? Generally speaking, and there are always exceptions, but generally speaking, there are four aspects that we need to cover. First, the conveyancing searches. We then need to deal with inquiries. We need mortgage offer, if applicable, and survey done, again, if applicable. So it's important to say that also, as well as covering these four aspects, none of it can begin until all parties are agreed and you have a complete chain and everybody has completed their solicitor paperwork and paid their fees. It's really important that this is done as soon as possible, and I see it too many times where weeks are lost because someone hasn't completed their paperwork so that solicitors can actually start the ball rolling. So the first aspect that we need to cover are the conveyancing searches. This is information that your solicitor will gather on the property and the nearby area to flag any issues that might be a concern. Things like the environmental check, a drainage check, and local council search that would flag any nearby planning that might be of concern to you. Next up on the list, and probably the trickiest out of all of them, are the inquiries. These inquiries are the queries and questions that solicitors need to ask and answer about the property. These can be anything from something really straightforward like providing a boiler certificate to something really complex that might be a problem with the title, so you need to get third parties involved like land registry. There might be a covenant on the property and that restricts certain elements of what you can do with it. It's all these queries and questions that need to be answered and satisfied before you can move on to exchange. And this is the part that can take the longest and dictate the total transaction time. Thirdly, we have the mortgage. So at this point, as you've agreed the sale, hopefully your buyer should already have an agreement in principle. Now they need to apply for their full offer that's specific to the property. Once they've submitted all their paperwork to the lender, so i.e. pay slips, bank statements, everything that's requested, the lender will then usually accept them for that loan, but they will also need to do a mortgage valuation of the property. This involves a surveyor coming out to the property and checking that everything's okay with it. It's usually not all that long, it's about a 20-30 minute visit. They go back to the lender, and as long as they agree that the property is worth what has currently been agreed and being paid for, they'll then get their full mortgage offer that's issued to both the buyer or the client and the solicitor. And that's usually about a week to 2 weeks after the mortgage valuation. The only important thing to really note about the mortgage offers or problems that can arise are where the lender doesn't agree with the value that's being paid for the property, i.e. what's called a down valuation. At this point, they will usually submit an offer to the client of a lower amount than they were originally asking for. At this point, it's either up to the buyer to find the difference in funds that are needed to reach the agreed sale price, or enter negotiations with the sellers to see what they can agree between them to make it work. So last but not least, we have the property survey. Most of the time, but not all the time, a buyer will have some form of property survey, just so they know everything is okay with the property and to address any major issues that they may not be aware of. Now, everything is usually okay, but if anything is picked up that both seller and buyer might not be aware of as a major issue and what we call a red flag issue, that might be something that both the buyer and seller need to discuss between them. These things can include anything from major roof works to subsidence, drainage issues, things that you wouldn't necessarily know other than a professional checking in real depth. So that is a very basic overview of the 4 things that we need to do in order to exchange and complete. Yes, there are other things that can come up, and every sale is unique and different, but generally speaking, those are the aspects that we need to cover. If I can be of any help or you have any further queries, please don't hesitate to get in contact. I'd love to help you.